This is Kai Cutter TV with another presentation. We gotta talk about this. Okay, guys, this is why you cannot believe mainstream fake news media when they report on almost anything. Now, we all know that there's a border crisis at the South US-Mexico border. Now, all of a sudden, Forbes is trying to come out with an article saying illegal immigration in America has continued to decline, trying to deflect off what's happening right now. Let's look into this. In a report that could provide context to most immigration news stories, new research reveals that the number of unauthorized immigrants has continued to decline in the United States. The unauthorized immigrant population fell to 10.35 million in 2019, a decline of 12% since 2010. So these people will say that there is a decline. Now, Trump had the most impact on a decline or a reduction of illegal immigration to the United States by his policies, creating a border wall and otherwise. Now, these people, these leftists, don't want to give Trump any credit. But at the same time, they will say that illegal immigration is falling right now in a Biden administration when it's going through the roof. But when you look at their numbers, I'm not going to read the rest of this article because it's complete rubbish. But when you look at the rest of the article, when you go from 2010, it only goes up to 2019. And this fake assertion that there's only 11 million undocumented immigrants in the United States is just ridiculous. So they're trying to say from 2010, there was 11.725 million illegal immigrants in the United States. And then you see a reduction. So almost 10 years later in 2019, there's 10.35. So you mean that there's less illegal immigrants in the United States in 2019 than there was in 2010? When I've been reporting on this almost every day on what's going on at the border. Don't believe these fake news media because they will lie through their teeth, and leftists that just only watch liberal news and don't compare information from different sources of information. They will believe this hook, line, and sinker. There's a border crisis. There's more unaccompanied minors crossing the border now than there has ever been before. So these people can use semantics and use their play on words to try and trick the American people and deflect what's really going on. But do your own research, find out for yourself. Don't believe the fake news media. We got that and a lot more illegal immigration news to get into. Check this out.
Now to the crisis at the border, where a record number of migrant children are in Border Patrol custody and shelter beds are scarce. The growing number of unaccompanied minors is raising alarms in the Biden administration. Sherman Chow has the latest from the White House.
It is the constant question, how to deal with undocumented immigrants trying to enter the U.S. Today, a new announcement from the White House coordinator for the southern border.
The president has committed to seeking $4 billion over 4 years to address the root causes of migration, including corruption, violence, and economic devastation exacerbated by climate change.
Republicans like Senator Ted Cruz have been critical of President Biden's rollback of Trump border policies. On Friday, Governor Abbott echoed that idea during a visit to Mission, Texas.
There is a crisis on the Texas border right now with the overwhelming number of people who are coming across the border. This crisis is a result of President Biden's open border policies.
Wording has been a debate.
Would you describe what's happening on the border as a crisis?
Whatever you call it wouldn't change what we're doing.
Biden advisors also traveled to the border last weekend after U.S. shelters received more than 7,000 unaccompanied children last month. The massive influx has reopened facilities like the one in Carrizo Springs, Texas, that made headlines under President Trump, as did his policy which separated children and their parents at the border.
Today we are announcing the restarting of the Central American Minors Program for children to be reunited with a parent who is legally in the United States.
The White House admits faster processing, better conditions, and a pathway to citizenship sends a mixed message to the undocumented. But
at the same time, you cannot come through irregular means. It's dangerous.
Sherman Chow, KHOU 11 News.
A new report says over 100,000 migrants have arrived at the southern border in recent weeks, something that is putting a strain on the already swamped system. Frank McCarthy has a look at how some in Texas are handling the surge.
The Hidalgo, Texas port of entry seen here crosses between Reynosa, Mexico and the United States. Customs and Border Protection say it's one of the 10 busiest ports of entry in the U.S. Now, according to reports, recently a lot of migrants are being arrested in the U.S. Border Patrol officials say much of the increase is in minors or families. A homeless shelter in nearby Harlingen, Texas says it's preparing to house migrants as needed.
Every 2 weeks, we're having collaboration meetings with other agencies. Catholic Charities and Good Neighbors and Ozanams, the ones that are really getting hit at Bronzeville with the immigrants. And we just meet every 2 weeks just to be prepared. We are prepared. We've been preparing ourselves for the past month.
One idea that some have had about how to handle migrants in Texas is to give them jobs rather than arrest them. The highly important Texas shrimping industry always needs staffing.
And actually, one of our number one issues, besides the flood of imported shrimp, is the lack of qualified crewmen to go out on our boats. So every year there's more and more fishing vessels that are tied up to the dock because we simply cannot find crew.
But Hans says it's not so easy to just give someone a job in shrimping.
They have to have some form of experience to get on our fishing vessels that stay out in the Gulf of Mexico for 2 months at a time. And it's one of the most dangerous industries in the United States. We're just not going to hire an immigrant that comes across without experience.
And so officials in this country will continue to work to figure out how to handle migrants. I'm Frank McCaffrey reporting.
Well, look, they should be embarrassed, right? You know, the American people can do math. The apprehensions over 100,000, that's triple what it was a year ago under Trump policies. And, you know, actions speak louder than words. They can say anything they want to say. But when you release thousands of people into the United States, some with even COVID, and you don't want to detain them, I mean, they send a clear message to the world. So their action speaks much louder than what the words are attempting to use. But, you know, there's two things they're ignoring. They're ignoring two things. Number one, they're ignoring that based on DOJ's data, Department of Justice data, 90% of Central Americans who claim asylum at the border never get relief because they either don't show up or they don't qualify. The other data mark they're missing is their own DHS life cycle report that says less than 3% of the hundreds of thousands of family units that are ordered deported by an immigration judge refuse to leave. 3% left. 97% stayed. And what's the penalty? They're going to get amnesty on their Biden plan.
Well, you know, over the last 72 hours, I have heard so many people in the administration who will not call it a crisis have said, you know what, we inherited a broken system. When you look at the numbers, it seems like the old system under Donald Trump actually worked at keeping people out of the country until they're processed legally.
They inherited the most secure border I've seen in my almost 35-year career. So they're lying to the American people. And the promises they made, look, it doesn't take a genius to realize when you make promises that, hey, we're going to have amnesty, we're going to fix DACA, we're going to give you free health care, they already crippled ICE, 90% of their authority is taken away because there's no interior enforcement. They're being released as quickly as possible from the border. Again, in 14-15, we built detention centers. We built 3,000 family beds. We built adult facilities. We held people. And after they lost their case, ICE removed them. And guess what happened? The surge went down because we ended the enticements. They're doing the complete opposite now, not by accident, not by incompetence, but by design. This is an open borders agenda, and they're not hiding it very well.
And with that, tonight we turn to the issue of immigration. Tonight, a record number of migrant children arriving at the U.S.-Mexico border without a parent or legal guardian. That number is only expected to grow. Tonight, thousands are being housed in holding facilities by Customs and Border Protection. And News Nation's Marky Martin's live for us there in Texas tonight with the latest on this. Marky?
Rob, since taking office on day one, the Biden administration has worked to dismantle many Trump-era policies, at the forefront of which is immigration. And with new leadership in the White House, Border Patrol agents are seeing a surge of people flocking to the border trying to cross. And included in that rush are thousands of unaccompanied children.
Beginning February 19th, asylum seekers were allowed into the United States. The Biden administration opening 3 ports of entry for those who have been forced to wait out their cases in Mexico.
Just seeing them for so long, suffering so much, hopeful and yet desperate, and now it happened. You know, it's the door's open. Why?
The first waves of an estimated 25,000 asylum seekers have already started arriving, but thousands more, including children, are expected to make the journey alone and in the midst of a pandemic. During a White House press briefing last week, Secretary of Homeland Security Alejandro Mayorkas refusing to call the border influx an emergency.
Do you believe that right now there's a crisis at the border?
I think that the answer is no. I think there is a challenge at the border that we are managing, and we have our resources dedicated to managing it.
According to Axios, Customs and Border Protection officials predict 13,000 unaccompanied minors will cross the border in May alone. By the end of the year, DHS estimates it'll be 117,000, and many of them are teens. The Domestic Policy Council says 6,000 migrants ages 16 and 17 were detained in February, and in January, 7,300 children were caught, the highest for that month in a decade.
Respectfully, sir, though, one of your predecessors, Jay Johnson, he said that 1,000 illegal border crossings a day constitutes a crisis, that it overwhelms the system. We're at between 3,000 and 4,000 now, according to CBP officials. So how is this not a crisis?
I have explained that quite clearly. We are challenged at the border. The men and women of the Department of Homeland Security are meeting that challenge.
Many, however, are in stark disagreement. Today, Texas Governor Greg Abbott visited the border city of Mission, Texas. He said as he was flying in, he watched from the sky as people tried to cross illegally.
There is a crisis on the Texas border right now with the overwhelming number of people who are coming across the border. This crisis is a result of President Biden's open border policies.
Abbott labeling it a humanitarian crisis that will worsen by the day. And he delivered a fiery warning: don't mess with Texas.
We're ready. We're waiting for you. If you dare step into the state of Texas, Texas will use every tool and strategy we can to arrest anybody who's violating the law. If you are a caravan or you're a cartel, you better take your activity to some other place because they will not be accepted in Texas.
Abbott even accusing President Biden today of not caring about Americans, but rather more for people who aren't even from here. And we can also tell you, too, according to reports, Biden has been briefed on needing some 20,000 beds across the border for an expected rush of these children. He has also been told that the number of migrant children is on pace to exceed the all-time high by 45%. And today, in a White House press briefing, Secretary Jen Psaki could not answer or confirm how many children have been apprehended along the southern border. Reporting live in Texas tonight, Marky Martin, News Nation.
If your family or circle of friends is anything like mine, it's diverse and there are different viewpoints on many issues. I try to make an effort to understand where people I disagree with are coming from. I do that for two different reasons. Number one, I'm always open to an argument that is better than my own. Perhaps the other person knows something I don't know or has some evidence I haven't considered. I'm happy to hear them out. The second reason I make an effort to understand where the other side is coming from is it makes me a more effective advocate for what I actually do believe. It helps me anticipate the weaknesses of my own argument and bolster them and be better prepared when they're challenged. So there are many reasons to expose ourselves to different perspectives. I mean, take the issue of a national minimum wage. There are those who believe Congress should set the minimum wage for everyone and it should be $15 an hour. There are those who think Congress should set the wage, but it should be higher or lower than $15 an hour. There are those who have no quarrel with $15 an hour as a minimum wage, but they believe that issue should be left to the different states and cities. There are those who believe government should not set the minimum wage at all. So it's the same issue, they're just different viewpoints. And then there are some issues where, try as we may, we cannot understand the other side of the issue at all. When you look at President Biden's immigration plan, you will find a lot of money for South and Central American countries. You will find a plan to make the passage from those countries to our own southern border safer. You'll find a path to citizenship for people who have already either crossed the border unlawfully or overstayed their visa. You'll find expanded visas for more workers in the United States. What you will not find is the money, the interest, or the commitment to border security. I mean, lay aside the sophistry of making it safer to travel to the southern border, but doing nothing about actually securing the southern border. Lay that aside for a second. I'm really trying to understand the argument against border security, especially since Obama and Biden once believed in it too.
I voted for a fence. I voted, unlike most Democrats, and some of you won't like it, I voted for 700-mile fence.
It will authorize some badly needed funding for better fences and better security along our borders, and that should help stem some of the tide of illegal immigration.
There's security for almost every federal building. There's security at all courthouses. There's security at sporting events. There's security at the airport. There's security at the mall. There's security in our homes. We call them walls and doors and locks, but it's security. I mean, my wife and I have a fence in our backyard. It helps me know where to stop cutting the grass. Security is everywhere, except in Mr. Biden's immigration proposal. You know, the home security business in this country is valued at more than $50 billion. $50 billion is how much we value security. And that doesn't even include law enforcement or other forms of government-provided security. That's home security. That's what we are willing to pay for out of our own pockets for security. So what exactly is the argument against having secure borders? I mean, I understand some people don't like walls or fencing or other specific forms of security. I mean, I find it ironic because we use walls and fences and metal detectors in every other facet of life, including going on the floor of the House to vote. If you don't like walls or fences, then what do you like? What is your better idea for having a secure border? I mean, why even have a border if you don't know who's coming and for what purpose? If you're for open borders, just say so. I mean, most Americans aren't, but if you are, just admit it. An immigration proposal that does not include border security is not a serious plan. It may be a political plan, but it's not a serious plan. Americans believe in security, and they will never understand why there is more security around the floor of the U.S. House when members vote on immigration bills than there is around the border of our country. And so far, I haven't heard a single cogent argument against border security.